time is 20:22, and I've just been told we are back online. So I would like to reconvene. Thank you. Item 12, Community Asset Transfer Update. I would like to pass over to Andy to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Hopefully you can hear me through the microphone. This is a update report to committee regarding community asset transfer. It's a regular item on this agenda. It updates members of where we are with the applications and expression of interest we've had in the past regarding community asset transfer. And if you recall, the March meeting also proposed and agreed a workshop with those applicants and colleagues from locality, which took place in June, and the report covers some feedback on that. The report also includes an appendix, which is a summary of where we are with all the EOIs from previous meetings, those that have been agreed, and those that will come back to future meetings following further work. There is one recommendation asking the committee to endorse the work to date and the approach, and I'm obviously happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that's a glaring thing on this one is where we look at the standard paragraph on risks and opportunities. It says there are no direct risks associated with this report. I would venture to suggest there's a huge risk at the moment because of LGR. We don't know if this report gets accepted and the various delays that are coming in later on in the report, we go past the October deadline when LGR kicks in. We've already had it said that we are in a situation where we still have to progress as if LGR is going ahead. That risk is not identified here, and it is a huge risk, and it should be in there as one of the risks. Just a couple of bits of housekeeping, really, other than that. When it comes to page 116 and bullet point 4, Freight House, the current tenure status, it states there that it's vacant short-term use design cabin ends 28th of February 2025. It ended 2026, so I think that does need to be updated, please. Just out of interest, page 117 with Hockley Woods. Obviously, as I represent Hockley, I would like to know who is being approached on that for taking that one on, and how that is going to be framed, because there can't be any financial connection with that, I would suggest, because of what it is. Thank you.
So thank you, Councillor Reeves. Point taken about the date. I'll correct the date. With regards Hockley Woods, this is obviously one that hasn't come forward yet with any detailed information, because, as it says there, the further information is being gathered as to the financial and the strategic implications. It obviously does say it's ancient woodland, special scientific interest, and also there are staff down there. So obviously they will all be points that will be raised when it comes back for a further meeting. Apologies. This is about data gathering so that it comes back to a future meeting where those points will be raised in terms of the financial and the strategic implications.
Councillor Hoy. Councillor.
I think I've said in previous meetings that I don't agree with the asset transfer policy of this council. I think this is transferring strategic assets which we should be retaining. I also am very unhappy about, and perhaps I should have declared an interest, as I do own a grave in the cemetery in Hall Road, which I assume it is the same cemetery, because there are two there and one is owned by the parish council, but this one says it's part owned by the district. I don't think assets like cemeteries should be passed on to other organisations. I think that should be a district-wide function where possible, for instance. And so I can't approve this.
So I think the report does acknowledge that. What the report says is obviously these are the expressions of interest that have been received. Obviously, we're not in a position to to strike any off unless it's a committee decision. All this really report says is these are the expressions of interest we've had. And you're right, there are a number of assets where expressions of interest have been put in, and those assets would be considered from an asset management perspective to be of a strategic nature, and therefore we're going to bring them back because there is some further work that we need to do to make sure that we capture all the risks that community asset transfer. So this report doesn't suggest there's any further. It says that there are a number of applications that we'd like to bring back with that further information to allow the committee to make a decision.
Sorry, thank you for letting me come back, Chairman. Just very briefly, the recommendation is asking us to endorse the approach to community asset register as set out in the report and at Appendix A, which is considered consistent with our the process and principles. I don't agree that this is a policy I can agree with because it's got assets in there which I don't agree should be in there, so I can't agree that that was correct, so I can't endorse it.
That's fine. Councillor Newport.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So, I do have to declare an interest as a Rayleigh Town Councillor, as we did, a non-registrable interest, as we did put an EOI in for the Grange Community Centre. Yeah, I do. I actually have an issue with the timescales on this as well, because I think we're actually increasing the risk in the process, because town and parish councils, they have a governance process as well. And whilst we're sat around, kicking the tyres on assets, saying, we've got to look at compliance works, yada, 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 we could be running this in a twin track anyway, ultimately. And all of those councils also have budgets to set. They have public consultation to set. It is within our financial regulations at Rayleigh Town Council that indeed, if we did want to take on an asset, we have to go out to public consultation on this. We have to look at our forward budgets. We have to build a business case. All of this takes an enormous amount of time, and it's a huge risk. It's a huge risk to the taxpayer, whether it's a district taxpayer, whether it's at a town or parish level, because this could all fall apart very, very easily and very quickly if we don't get a move on and actually take these considerations as rather more seriously than I think what we're doing right now. So it's very difficult to support this going forward because there's just no movement. This item particularly, and I'm speaking about the Grange, has been on here for a long time now, and we just not moved forward.
So is there a question? Okay.
Rant noted. Councillor Belton.
Thank you. I've got a number of issues. First and foremost, and it just goes on from what Councillor Newport just said, very little has changed since March. Again, Chairman, this is your report. You're endorsing everything that's within it. I would hope that you would have looked at the last report before bringing this one forward to us as to not waste our time. Very little has changed. We had this debate about the cemetery in March. This report should be having a recommendation, if that's minded to do so, no further action on the cemetery. For example, Hockley Woods, a debate has been done that Hockley Woods isn't on the market. Why is it still in the report? Why has it not been brought forward as a recommendation for no further action? We could reduce officers' work dramatically by taking a decision as members. It's a member council, not an officer council. Members take the decisions. Now, we would be in a position tonight, had you have brought a report forward that had been discussed or decided upon, where we could take some of these off of the table, because as it stands, officers have got multiple reports to bring back to us in September on assets that we already may know as members we wouldn't support. And therefore, we're just wasting our time and officers' time and the people that are expressing the interest. So I think that's a fundamental issue that we probably could have done better at, having given there's been 4 months to address it. I recognise you weren't on the council last time, but you've still endorsed a report. It's your name on the report. So that's just a general rant following on from Councillor Newport's, but I think we could have done more there. In regards to some of these assets, there's just a couple of silly things. I brought this up in the last report. This says Rose Garden, Southend Road, Hockley. The Rose Gardens are in Rochford. We need to get these fundamentals right. 57 South Street, Rochford. We're waiting on the options paper because we've got the budget there, which is fine. It says that it's coming back to the next committee. However, it's not on the work plan for the next committee. So that's wrong as well, and it's your work plan. There's other things in here like that I think need to be addressed. And also, Chairman, in your leader's statement recently, you said we've disposed of too many assets. What assets have we disposed of? Other than South Street, which were a long time coming, we're looking to get rid of a patch of mud known as the Rose Garden because the parish want to do it good, and we're looking at getting rid of the toilets. What are the other assets that we've disposed of? Because I don't recall.
That was specifically in reference to the transfer of 1,600 homes to sanctuary homes.
Okay, I mean, that was many, many years ago, and that is not an asset in the way that we are talking about our assets and our asset strategy. It doesn't even relate. So
But generally, we are talking about asset utilization and underutilization, and that was my specific point in my update.
This is where communication is so important, because we were talking about assets, you spoke about assets, and that definitely wasn't clear. Okay, in relation to the report, clearly there's members in the chamber that aren't happy with just accepting it as it is. Is there anything that can be done to move some of these along so that officers haven't got to do pieces of work on things that aren't on the table? Or, in your opinion, are all of these assets on the table for disposal?
I'm not entirely clear what members are saying they would like to do. The idea, the concept of community asset transfer was actually agreed as part of the asset management strategy. So I'm not sure whether I'm... We brought paper back because that's what's in the asset management strategy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, yeah, I wasn't clear because I was in a bit of a rant as well. The strategy isn't the problem, to my opinion. There's no problem with the strategy. This report should come forward to every single meeting, but there is no point assets being on there if members are not comfortable with them being transferred. So therefore, this report, and we certainly discussed the cemetery in the March meeting, that definitely came up, and Hockley Woods definitely came up before. And there wasn't an appetite for those to be progressing. So therefore, what I'm asking is, it would have been helpful if chairman, leaders, members had looked at the report beforehand so that we brought forward a report that we could get consensus on. This is another nuance of a minority administration, because we're in a position now where this is such an important piece of work. Risk is mounting every single day. Councillor Newport is quite right. If this comes back in September, that's too late for a lot of parishes that are interested. It's too late for some of the interested parties, and it's probably too late for us because the structural change order was coming. So where does that leave us? This strategy took a lot of work. Officers put a huge amount of work into coming up with the strategy. It did get unanimously agreed initially, albeit there's been then dialogue about the table. How do we get this back on track, and how do we make it work for the council and the public?
Thank you, Councillor. That's helpful. I have a suggestion that, given the recommendation is around endorsing an approach, would councillors be happy to endorse item 1 and item 2? So applications that are proceeding and applications where long lease arrangements are already in place, and we could add a further set of words around item 3, which is that they will be taken offline and discussed and brought back at a later date, or words to that effect.
What do the members feel about that?
There is only one at the moment. No, I'm suggesting that the only recommendation is amended to, I think it says to endorse. Let me just find the recommendation.
So, Chairman, for clarity,
Sorry, I'm
do you
just
mean
finding the
items 1 and 2
recommendation.
on the appendices?
Yeah, committee was asked to endorse the approach to the community asset register set out in the report, and items 1. I was proposing adding items 1 and 2 at Appendix A.
Sorry, Chairman. Just as a point of accuracy, and Andy might correct me on this, but the Crown Hill toilets aren't on there as a long-term lease arrangement, Andy, to Rayleigh Town Council. I can't. Sorry, should they be on there?
Were the Crown Hill toilets subject to an EOI? I've captured all the EOI.
Sorry, so the asset is owned by RDC, but it's leased to Rayleigh Town Council. Would we need to put in a separate? Yeah, sorry, I don't know idea.
And all requests for community asset transfer ought to be, ought to come through just as an EOI, and then we can look at then the circumstances, and then report back.
No, okay. I
Councillor
think the problem here is the communication between the district council and maybe the town council. That information hasn't really been. The district haven't looked at what's leased to the town council to tell them, oh, you've got to put in an EOI for it anyway. So I think, sorry, that's just a point.
Are you happy to take that offline and we'll?
Yeah,
chat off?
thanks, Andy. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Marriott.
Sorry, it's growing back a little bit, but I've been waiting to ask my question here. It's to do with the financing of these assets. I've noticed that a significant number of these assets fall within Rochford. And can the chairman confirm that the money that's set aside for Rochford, with particular reference to 57 South Street, is going to be spent in Rochford, including the money from the sale of the South Street offices? Because I was very concerned at full council when a member here wanted to siphon some of this money off for Rayleigh. It's been set aside for Rochford assets. Can you confirm that money that's been earmarked for Rochford assets will get spent on Rochford assets? Thank you very much.
Yes, I can confirm that.
Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just an addition to a declaration of interest of being on Rayleigh Town Council, but also an observation, I think, what was also brought up by Councillor James Newport in regards to items missing within Rayleigh. Can't see anything in there. It doesn't say why it's not there. I mean, there's a few there that are Rochford owned. One specifically, again, to declare an interest, the Connaught Road site for the Royal Air Force, which is Rochford owned and leased to the Royal Air Force, of which I'm chairman of that committee. I don't see that there. Is there a reason why we've got a register here, but you've got items that aren't on there? Can you explain that?
Yes, I can, Councillor. So this is a register of expressive interest. Sorry, this is a register of those expressive interests that have been received by the council. It is not an asset list. It's just a list of where organisations have expressed an interest in asset transfer, and those assets that refer to haven't had any AOIs associated with them.
Councillor Linden.
Thank you. I understand that it says at the top it's an expression of interest, so it's not actually the assets which are already leased. What I am confused about, we're actually talking about some of the expression of interest or the assets which are on the list. The recommendation is asked to endorse the approach to the community asset register. Why are we discussing what's on there? Or surely we should be discussing whether we actually agree to the approach of it, not what's actually on the list. please, can you explain what the recommendation actually is for?
You're right. The recommendations is to endorse the approach. I would go with that. Councillor Reeves. Thank you. Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Okay, so in terms of the approach is already agreed. That's a strategy that's already agreed. So I don't know why we need to endorse it again. But that aside, I think what Fiona set out can be managed if we just amend that to include the bits so that we can take those forward, because otherwise we're causing even more delays. But what I don't think we can do is just sit on this until September. I don't know how we deal with that. Is there going to be communications with the people that have expressed an interest? I just think it makes a little bit of a farce of the whole piece of work if we're bringing it back in September, and that might be too late for a lot of budget.
No, we won't wait that long. We will have regular communications, and I'll coordinate with the officers to regularly update the members on this.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Decisions can only be taken in this room, and if we're coming back in September to take a decision on an asset, the expression of interest may no longer be valid because they can't then get it through their governance process as Councillor Newport was set out, or they may have taken another one, or we may not even want that asset to be considered. And I think this is probably going to have to be an offline piece of work now to understand what the next steps are, because I'm not comfortable endorsing something that I think fundamentally officers are going to put hours and hours and hours of time into for it to be too late for half the assets, or half the assets we just go, they were never on the table. And we had this conversation in March that the next report would be sort of to progress a lot of this, and it stayed. Some's progressed, which is great, but not enough.
Can I just go back to the point that was already made, which is that this is about endorsing an approach? I think what I'm hearing is, and I don't think you can look at the approach without having a discussion about some of the assets which are listed. I'll go back to my point earlier, which is I think I haven't heard anyone disagreeing with the approach with regards to point 1 and 2 in Appendix A. Michael shaking his head. But we could carve out a second recommendation which says that any assets in category 3 on the appendix will be subject to further scrutiny and discussion, or something along those lines. Would members be happy with that?
I would support that.
Yeah, I think. Sorry. Yes, Chairman. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think you're going to have to do a piece of work with officers about what comes back in September, and to maybe you need to set a meeting up with leaders so that we can talk to our groups to understand if there's any assets that shouldn't be on there, to save some time and reduce that list down, because I'm sure there's some more that can go up into that no further action section and actually streamline this whole process, especially if your approach is not to dispose of assets. Then again, we're kind of undermining each other's conversation.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we will set up working groups to go through the list and minimize it. We'll take that away as an action point. Yes, we'll put that as a recommendation. That will be recommendation 3, if that's okay.
Sorry, could you just relay that recommendation again?
So the chairman has just suggested that we have a working group to go through this, so that would form part of the task and finish. But to be part of the recommendation, could we include that? Thank you.
Councillor Reeves.
Can I suggest as part of that we actually do have a timescale linked to it, because that seems to be rather key here. I don't know what members might suggest on that as being reasonable. Officers might want to have input on that.
Would you put a time to it?
Well, we've got this next meeting in September, so it's got to be finished before then. Only it's a tight timescale, admittedly, but if we don't actually put some sort of time to it, it's going to slip again, and then we're going to be all sorts of trouble.
So just to replay, so we're asking for an approach, for an endorsement of the approach. So I'm not sure this work. I'm not sure what the work is when we say something's got to be done by September. There will be. There's various different assets being all reviewed at the same time concurrently. So I think if the piece of work relates to item 3 under Appendix A, which is the assets that people are saying tonight they're not sure about, then I'm fairly sure something could be brought back in respect of those to a future committee via a working group or a task and finish group. But the work will continue on the other assets.
Councillor Bilton.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I was suggesting. Let's move forward everything we can. Then in table 3, let's set up, regardless of what it's called, let's formalise something where members can discuss offline what those assets look like and see if there are any that are fundamentally not on the table, so that we can remove those and progress anything else ready for September for some decisions to actually be taken. So this list doesn't just keep growing.
Yeah. So from what I'm hearing, there are 2 recommendations. We look at item 3 for items that can be excluded, and then recommendation 3 is for a new task and finish group to be set up to review the progress. Are we happy with that? Can I ask for a vote on a show of hands for? Yeah. So.
Would you like me to read out? Yeah. Okay. So, recommendation 1, that the committee endorse the approach to Community Asset Register as set out in the report and at Appendix A, which is consistent with the process and principles adopted by the Strategy Finance Policy Committee in September 25. Recommendation 2, any assets currently in item 3 in Appendix A will be reviewed separately and brought back to a future committee. And recommendation 3 is a working group will be established to review progress and bring a report back to committee.
Task and finish.
Okay, thank you.
Members, I will now move a motion on page 10 along with those additional 2 recommendations. Can I have a seconder, please? Okay, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Ukwe. I would like to propose the members to take these recommendations en bloc. Is everyone happy with that? Okay. No? Okay, we'll take a vote on show of hands for that approach to be done en bloc or separately. Can we have a show of hands? En bloc. Good. Thank you. Can I now have a show of hands of everyone supporting those 3 recommendations? I think that's unanimous. Now, let's just everyone against the motions, recommendations, and those abstaining. Okay. Those recommendations are now carried. Thank you. The next item number 13, Mill Hall Arts and Event Centre, next step. The report begins on page 121, but before I bring the officer in, I would like to clarify that the current arrangements will stay in place until we have found a viable solution. This includes extending the license for the cafe to 30th November to match the license expiry date for the bar. I would like Fiona to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't have too much to add other than the report that's in front of you. Just a summary, really, of progress to date. The report outlines that we have been out, as requested in previous committee, to look for an operator for the building. That's not resulted in an appointment. So we are looking at a number of recommendations around continuing in the existing model that we have at the moment, whilst looking to explore alternative operational proposals. I would add that we have had a party who are interested in the building, but were not unable to tender under the existing tender response that was required. So we would also propose looking at alternative models with that potential operator. So that, happy to take any questions at this point. And I think, Councillor, were you were looking at potentially some alternative words to recommend?
Yes, Councillor Hookway is going to speak about that.
Thank you, Chairman. We've got an alternative to recommendation 5, which reads: the committee agrees to establish a cross-party working group of 6 members, 1 from each political group, on the future operating model for the Millhall Arts and Events Centre, with relevant stakeholders being invited to meetings as required, with the terms of reference being to input into the options being developed under Recommendation 3 and Recommendation 4, and to report its findings back to committee within 2 months of the first meeting being held. Recommendation 5 then moves to Recommendation 6 with a slight amendment in relation to it states that officers are to explore in-house operation improvements as opposed to progress. Thank you.
Do members have any questions? Before I take any questions, I would like to clarify that recommendation 5, which Councillor Hookway has just read out, is a new recommendation. In addition to that, what we have also suggested is where it talks. Recommendation 6, the new suggested wording reads that the committee supports officers to explore in-house operational improvement proposals for the Mill Hall, including short-term, medium-term and long-term measures to reduce operating cost, improve staffing efficiencies, bring forward income-generating opportunities and strengthen the commercial performance of the venue, with any decisions requiring further approval to be reported back to the committee. I'd just like to clarify one point with the officers before I continue. Yeah, with that point clarified, do members have any questions? Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Oh, right, where to start? First off, the report came forward with a bunch of recommendations that clearly weren't supported by this council or the public. So it's really disappointing, again, that you haven't taken the opportunity to engage with us and get it right first time, rather than bring forward a change on the night that none of us have seen, and we've now got to, based on what we've heard, establish. This follows a conversation I've had with officers yesterday and then members subsequently. First off, I absolutely support the extension of the licence to Eternity Events. It should never have even been in question. This council does not have expertise in running bars, cafes, events. It's not where our expertise lies, and we should rely on the experts, especially when they're local businesses that are tried and tested. So I absolutely support the extension of the licence. part of the work that needs to be done is looking at what other services those kind of organisations could take on a profit share arrangement that would help reduce the subsidy required by the council, but support a local business and enhance the asset. I'm not sure, some of this stuff we could have agreed tonight, in my opinion. Staffing efficiencies. If officers are telling us there's a £45,000 staffing efficiency to make by not recruiting another caretaker, why are we not agreeing that tonight? And that's then dealt with. Higher fees, higher policy and opening hours. There's a piece of work in there that could be agreed. The concern I had was the opening hours. The last time a recommendation came forward to change the hours, there was uproar. This report says let officers decide what the opening hours for. That's a fundamental mistake that should never happen. We have to remember this is a member-led council. We are the ones that are accountable to the public. Our officers do great work, but we're the ones that are accountable. So it has to be what we think. The marketing contract not being renewed, that's potentially something that could have been agreed tonight and a saving made. By just setting up a working group, not only are we using up so much time, we're not making those savings imminently. The illustrative revised net operating cost, there's a whole host of stuff that I think we could have agreed with a bit of a tweak. What I feel like I've just heard, and I could be wrong, is that we're just going to kind of stick it on a working group and come back at a later date to the whole entire thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. We have an opportunity now. So we removed some of the capital expenditure from the Mill Hall on the basis that this was going to be operated by a third-party business in the very near future. So we didn't invest in the terrace and we didn't invest in the solar panels. Two things that the community want and that I think largely we agree are needed, but they weren't right to invest in at the time because we would be making a saving for somebody else, not for the residents who were paying the tax. If we're going to be looking at keeping this on for a longer period of time, we really need to look at the capital investment, not least because we just moved X amount of, whatever it was, 1.3 million of underspend into the reserves that could fund both of those projects and more. So I think there's a holistic piece of work to be done with the Mill Hall. I'm very pleased fundamentally, first and foremost, that we look to extend the licence. That is critical. But I think this whole report, we could have done so much more tonight as a committee had there been a bit of communication beforehand. Again, I come back to this nuance of a minority administration. You can't get anything through without us, so let's work together. Otherwise, we're just going to keep coming back with LGR chasing us down the road.
What I would say to that is, because we were exploring different options and we only concluded recently that whatever was discussed previously is not viable, we'll continue to explore other options, and that is why we are recommending an approach to set up a working party where your point about representation is taken on board. Councillor Newport.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased to actually hear you say about a working group on this, or task and finish group, whatever we want to call it. But we do need to work together, and I think Councillor Belton has said this numerous times now. Minority administration, we all need to get around a table and work together. Political differences aside, do the best thing for the residents, but we also need a space where we can scrutinise and why that procurement process has failed and how we can fix that. And it's not easy. It's not an easy building to deal with. It's not an easy asset. If it was that easy, we'd all have done it already. And it is, so we have to recognise that and put our heads together and sit down. We know what the public want. We've all got the scars to prove it, and you surely don't want those either. And we can sit round, not waste time, set ourselves deadlines to bring this back and guide the officers to what we want. And it is for us to decide what we want and the public want this building to be ultimately. And also, this is something that I've raised before, political uncertainty. We cannot keep changing direction. This is absolutely crazy that it's taken years to get to this point. And who's to blame? I don't think we need to point fingers around this anymore. We just need to get on, get it done before LGR comes along and someone else makes that decision for us. So I welcome you bringing forward the idea of a working group. and I for one will do my utmost to make this building a success. And the Liberal Democrat, as we fought to save it, our group will absolutely be totally engaged in it, and the independent group. Thank you.
Well, Mill Hall is a strategic asset for us, and it has historic importance to Rayleigh. So our commitment is to make the best use of that asset. And like I said in my leader speech, we are committed to make the best utilization, but we don't want to rush into something which is not right, and the decision cannot be reversed. At the same time, what I would like to say is we are committed to it, and we will bring forward recommendations on a very urgent basis as soon as the next council time, because what we are currently seeing is the previous approach obviously has fallen apart. We just need to look at new ways of how best to fully utilize the asset, and that is why it needs time, coordination between different working groups, and my views on this is not political differences, but representation across all working groups. Thank you. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair. I read this report, having been involved, like other members, very much in the past on this, with, quite frankly, disbelief. We have been strongly advised by by officers in the past that there is no way that we can actually run this particular place in-house. We don't have the experience. We don't have the labour to be able to do the personnel to deal with it, and we don't have the expertise. And that has been laboured to us in previous times. So to do a complete 360-degree turn on this, on the advice that we are given, is a little bit concerning on where we're being led on this one. The other thing that to bear in mind as well, that working groups, we've had these before. My plea would be to officers on working groups, can we please not have them as a meeting where we just go over what happened in the past? Because this is what has happened in previous working groups. When we bring those working groups together, can we have positive moves or ways we can look forward to things that we can actually make decisions on, not just become a talking shop? Historically, it's been very disappointing being involved in this. And as other members have said, it's got nowhere. And we seem to be going round and round in circles again. The other thing that was just a little bit concerning is that, again, risk on this one. I'm seeing in this report here words like indicative, potential, depends on, and risk. There's just so much that depends on possibilities here. We need definites. We haven't got the time to go round and round in circles anymore. So my plea to officers would be, please can we have, when we have these working groups, serious proposals for ways ahead. Thanks.
Yeah, I completely endorse that view, and I'll work with the officers to have a stricter agenda on the working groups. Can I defer to Fiona on the other items?
I'm not sure you asked questions specifically that I can answer, but I note your point.
Councillor Marriott.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the benefits of the Mill Hall is that it has a large kitchen with commercial equipment. I believe bringing this kitchen back into use is key to make sure that the Mill Hall fulfills its full extension. Please can this be investigated? Also, on an easier point, members of the public are asking for seating in the bar area. Surely it's not too much of a stretch to arrange this. Thank you very much.
Both those points noted, and I personally spent an hour and a half at the Mill Hall yesterday. There are some ideas that I will discuss with the officers, and we'll take your ideas and suggestions on board as well. Thank you. Councillor Linden.
Thank you. I'm confused, very confused also about the report coming back, looking at running particularly the mill hall in-house. We've already had the freight house and the mill hall partly run by some businesses, stroke, CICs, etc. Yet we keep on saying what they're offering is not acceptable. Yet we're looking to go back out or possibly use in-house. Yes, it is acceptable. The people who run it are local people who want to run it. We've got to find a way how we can work with them to enable them to run the community buildings that we want for our residents. Let's stop looking outside. Let's start looking within. Let's start making a way of working it. Let's not make the council's problem their problem, our problem, the community's problem. If we've got a problem with staff, we've got a problem with being able to take one of these businesses on because of we're worried about what we're doing with certain elements, then let's overcome that. Let's do something about that. We've already got the answer in our hand for both the freight house, the mill hall and the Grange. Let's act on it and let's find a way of making it work.
Thank you, Councillor Linden. So our approach to that is this is a very short-term measure where we are going to continue with status quo. And once we've identified a solution which is viable, and the solution will most likely to be an external one, because like Councillor Eves has pointed out, we don't have the internal expertise. This is a temporary measure that we are putting in place to continue the current arrangements. Fiona, would you like to add to that?
Yes, I just would remind councillors where we started on this journey in recent times, which was the fact that the building is costing the council a lot of money to run. I make no judgment on whether the council wants to continue funding that, but I think we had this conversation previously around as the council potentially enters into the world of LGR, whether this is an asset, to make this asset viable, we've had to look at options. The preferred option that councillors voted for at the time was to look for an external operator to take some of that financial liability away and actually protect the building because it would be leased to an operator. That hasn't been successful. So officers have carried out what was agreed in previous meetings. That hasn't been successful. So we have to look for another plan. I think the key to this is viability. And what I'd like to explore with the working group is what everyone understands to be the meaning of the word viability going forward, because that will be the crucial point.
Can I come back? R4, it is request that officers bring further report committee setting out viable alternatives. We've got an option with what we've currently got, and I'm not talking about the council running it themselves with their staff. We've got an option and we've got to look at that and explore it fully with those people so that we can actually utilise our local, our homegrown people to run those buildings and find a way that we can financially implicate that.
And that's exactly what we are suggesting. So we are going to look at all the options and come up with the most viable solution, which will be put towards the members of the committee to approve. And we will do that quickly. Councillor Hookway.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of points. I think that there was the work programme or proposed improvements to the asset. It was mentioned that some of those improvements weren't carried forward for a reason, but perhaps one of the consequences of that was that it might have made it not viable for a third-party operator. So perhaps that is something in the working party to consider when it meets. Also, the idea of the working party isn't something that's just going to roll on and on and on. There's going to be strict timetables. It's going to have to come up with ideas and solutions in a fairly short order. Otherwise, it's not worth it existing. So it's going to need to come up with some solutions out of the process in a short time order. Thank you.
Councillor Lisa Newport.
Thank you, Chair. So I've previously sat on the Mill Hall Working Group with other councillors in the room, and I'd like to know if there's an indication on what member of staff may be leading that working group, because it's very important that the correct member of staff is leading it and advising the working group members. Thank you.
I'm not sure we've agreed yet. The member of staff that will be leading it, but your point is noted.
Councillor Wotton.
Thank you, Chairman. Perhaps no one in this chamber bears the scars of the Mill Hall more than I do, because for 6 years now, 7 years, 8 years, we've been talking about how to deal with this amongst a number of assets. So Rochford residents, particularly those in Raleigh, spoke loud and clear, and we have listened and we have agreed that the Mill Hall, whilst it has its commercial limitations, it is a valuable asset that we should do our best. And I think Councillor Hookway has perhaps just nailed it in the sense of we may have to give up on this idea of thinking that there is a commercial operator out there external to the council. It may be that we have to make a fundamental decision of how much we are prepared to sponsor and subsidise it as a community asset. And that is a budgetary consideration. A situation that was very different in 2020, as I said earlier in an earlier report, compared with where we are now. We are relatively, in terms, awash with money as the authority. So very, very different times. But I get quite frustrated, if I'm honest with you. I would prefer not to call it a working group, because that just implies, and to be fair, others have made the point, it can't just go on and on and on. A task and finish group, a title, has much more definition around it, because it does imply that it's going to reach a conclusion. So my personal preference would be to call it a task and finish. It's essentially the same thing, but it gives a little bit more of an outcome to it. I get frustrated because I look at these recommendations. My first question really for R1 is why? Because some simple analysis would say, is it ever going to be viable for an external operator? You know, we should have reached this conclusion a long, long time ago. What does short term, what does medium term, what does long term mean? All I actually see is, over a number of years, so successive administrations, so I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, but we're just kicking the can down the road. Now, it may be that we're not going to kick the can down the road any longer and we're going to get a proper outcome. But I think some crunch decisions need to be made about the financing. I don't know, I'm in favour of reducing costs, this obsession of reducing costs. I want to see what a true operating model is. It may be that we need to extend our costs before we start talking about, we may need to invest. I don't know the answer, but we may need to invest to actually, in the longer term, see whether or not we can limit on our expenditure. So I understand the concept. I'm not sure now is the right time. We want to get it. And I will make a plea. We have a very nice tapestry which is sitting gathering dust. Many people have said to me, why don't we put that tapestry up in the Mill Hall for the sake of a few screws? Do we need to have a committee decision, or could we just get on and get a few screws out and get the tapestry at least in public view so that it's there for the benefit of our residents so they can actually see the historic progress, a bit like the Bayo tapestry, but the Rochford tapestry, where many, many hours of community residents sweated blood, sweat and tears to make it happen. Let's get that tapestry on public view and let's make a commitment. We get it into the Mill Hall. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wotton, some very good points. I'm quite happy with the approach of calling this group Task and Finish Group. And on the other points, I'll discuss with the office, especially the tapestry point. And your specific suggestion about what we do in the future. Where we are today is we've explored one option which unfortunately did not work. We'll go away and look at some other options. I have personally got some ideas of myself. We will go away and explore those options and bring that to the Task and Finish group. and I do have some urgency about this purpose. So we will try and move it along as quickly as we can by bringing in consensus, like I've always said. So we are attaching a lot of urgency to this, and we'll be working alongside the officers and the task and finish group to get it to a good place. Thank you. Councillor Reeves. Councillor Ward.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think the first question that has to be asked of this whole project, is the outcome a commercial outcome or is it a social outcome? Because until we've actually come to a conclusion, we can't get anywhere. We know that as an asset, it loses, it's like a black hole. We know that. That is obvious. Everyone knows that. So you're going to have to decide if it's going to be a commercial venture. We know that the people who have applied know it's not really workable. That is obvious. It's not big enough. You can't get the space in there. You need it to be a lot larger, and it would probably have needed realistically to have been pulled down and a bigger one built to make it a proper commercial asset. We've got what we've got now, and we have to look at it. So to me, the only way it's going to work is looking at it as a social project for the people of the district with an additional kind of commercial edge to it. But as far as I can see at this moment, we have to look at realism. And to me, it is based on a social project more than anything else.
Whilst I agree with some parts of it, what we have to look at is this is a strategic asset, like I've said, with a lot of historic importance and public sentiment attached behind it. Now, what shape it takes needs to be worked out, and that is what I said to Councillor Wotton's responses. So we'll go away and look at those. Whatever outcomes happens, we will try and make sure that that is in the best interest of the community. Councillor Belton.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Look, we're going to end up doing the working group in the committee if we're not careful, but just a couple of points. The working group, task and finish group, which is, is the better term for it. When, how often? Because we've just set up another working group for another huge topic, and we've also set up a working group for planning policy. I've got more working group meetings than there are days of the week, and appreciate I won't have to be on them all, but I think we need to be mindful that all of these are coming forward in September, and it's August, and our officers have holidays. I'm sure some of the members on the council have holidays. This is the absolute worst timing to be trying to deal with such big topics. So that is going to need to be addressed and addressed rapidly. But my point is, the procurement process didn't work. We've got an interested party, but it didn't work because the model that we were putting forward, because it come with a bunch of council staff, great council staff, that would essentially need to be two-pid over to make it work, because that's the type of environment that we're in. That isn't going to work for most commercial businesses. I think anybody in business would recognise that public sector in the private sector the two don't fit. So we need to be mindful of that, and we need to address that situation. But what we do not need to do is reinvent the wheel. We know how the mill hall can work. We know we've got a partner or a tenant that is making it work in certain aspects. Let's engage them before we sit down as a working group and start chucking a load of new ideas in a pot. I cannot count how many ideas have gone into a pot since I've been on the council, and probably well before I joined. So why do we not, first and foremost, look at the people that are interested, sit down with them as a group and let them present to us what they believe can be achieved. And then from there, we work backwards. What investment would that need from the council? What subsidy might that need ongoing? What are we prepared to do to make it the social space that it needs to be, but the commercial success it can be for people like Eternity Events? We've got Friends of Mill Hall who put on fantastic shows there and fill that place out with showstoppers. So let's embrace the expertise we've got. Let's not try and reinvent the wheel, but let's just support that, because I think that's how we get to the end much faster. If we start from the beginning, this council will close before the Mill Hall opens.
So we're not suggesting reinventing the wheel, but Councillor Hookway wants to come in.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Belton. I think the only thing with your suggestion is that on one hand you're talking about timescales to get things done within a reasonable time frame, and then you come up with a suggestion that's only going to extend that and take it outside of the proper means to discuss it, which would be the task and finish group. So I know that you want to have engagement, but we can do that within that process, and we need to be able to have something where we can focus people's minds, and I feel that that's the appropriate vehicle. Thank you.
Sorry if I wasn't clear, Chairman and Vice Chairman. I totally endorse the working group, but the speed in which we set it up is the issue. What I was suggesting is that at the first meeting of that working group, we invite the interested party in that expressed an interest and ask why the procurement didn't work, and then start from there, because then we can see where the gaps are. That becomes step one. And then once that part has been done, the members start to look at what comes next. But I believe that is the fastest way, because we've got a tried and tested model. We just need to work out, is the council prepared to subsidise that to make it viable? But I totally endorse a working group or task and finish group. In terms of the timings, I think there's a piece of work to be done, but no, I'm fully on board of that.
Point noted. And like I said, we have all the learnings. We'll coordinate with the officers and the members before we get to the first meeting and make sure it's a constructive one. Councillor Reeves, I'm sorry about...
That's okay. Thanks, Chair. Just a very quick one. Fiona concerned me a little bit where we don't actually now have an officer who is a point on this, and I would suggest that we are advised which officer is going to be at point as soon as possible. That goes for the Freight House as well. The reason being why is there was a very serious breach in communication with Eternity Events, where their staff found out about them not having a job before the management found out, because it went out on social media. And that wouldn't happen if there was an officer at point to be able to communicate and be the one point at one place, one-step communication between the parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeve. Before we move on, I would like to say the meeting has now nearly lasted 2.5 hours. I would like to move a motion without notice in line with Committee Procedure Rule 9 to extend this meeting for as long as it's necessary in order to complete the business. I would like a seconder to support this. Can we now move to a vote? Thank you very much for the support. We'd extend it for another 30 minutes and take it up to 10 o'clock. It is important that we conclude the important business of the day. Yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions or observations on Mill Hall that we haven't covered? Councillor Linden.
First, I'd like to thank Councillor Belton for translating what I actually said into council language. I will reiterate, and yes, task and finish. I've been sitting on working groups on the Mill Hall, and things get agreed and never get implemented. We need to make sure that it's not put forward to the next council meeting 2, 3, 4 months down the road and then deferred or forgotten about. More importantly, we have the answer. I will reiterate, we have the answer within the people already working within those buildings who have worked in those buildings. We are the stumbling block. The council is the stumbling block. We need to move that rock out the way so that we can then get on and make sure those buildings are viable.
Point noted, Councillor Linden. And like I said, we are attaching urgency to this, so we'll coordinate that. We'll listen to all the parties and get to the right outcome as soon as we can. Thank you. Members, I will now move a motion that the recommendations on page 122 be approved. Can I have a seconder, please? Yeah, subject to amendment R5, which I discussed at the top of the conversation, which related to the setting up of task and finish group. Councillor Newport.
So just for clarification, Chair, R5 in the printed papers that we've got is moving to R6 with the change of the committee supports officers to explore in-house operational improvement, and then replacing R5 or in addition to R5 as newly R5, the recommendation that you said at the beginning. Yeah,
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Should there not also be a recommendation to extend the licence? Because otherwise that's going to get lost.
Yeah, I'm happy to cover that.
Yeah, I think it can come from you guys, just the wording, but I think there needs to be something in there to offer a licence extension.
Yes, I think we just need to check the legal position. That's not suggesting that we won't extend it, but it might not be in that form. It might not be an extension form. It might have to be in a slightly different legal form. So I'd be a bit nervous about the words extending when it might end up having to be a new licence issued just because of the way the legal structures work.
So I just think there needs to be some certainty for them. I totally recognise what you're saying. The wording's important here, but there needs to be something to
enforce the intention.
No.
Councillor Okoye wants to come in.
In regard to Councillor Belton's point about the licence, I believe it's in the report. So it is if we are noting the report, it's already there.
If I may, the licences, one ends in August and one ends in November. They will just end unless we agree to revisit those licences to look at how they get extended or renewed. Or I think we just need to be careful because it is a business that we're dealing with, and wording can catch the council out. I think Fiona's probably best placed to come in, but if that's okay.
Fiona, would you like to come in?
I'm just wondering whether we could amend recommendation 2, which says the committee agrees that the council should continue to operate the Mill Hall Arts and Events Centre under the current council-operated model in the short to medium term, which will include. Sorry, I'm trying to think on my feet. Which will including incurring current tenants. Yeah. 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 So under the current council-operated model in the short to medium term, including current occupiers of the building or something along those lines.
Councillor Linden.
Slight curveball. I know you're looking at doing completion of trying to find a suitable end game for it, but if you're looking to end licences in November and you're right in the most profitable period, is there no way that could be looked at with the proviso if something's put in place beforehand, extending to mid-January, where effectively you're going in the quiet period?
So I don't think it's appropriate we talk about terms for any licence or new licence when we've got the tenant in the room and this is public session. I'm happy to take that offline, but I don't think it's appropriate to discuss now.
Can we now move to Councillor Wootton?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairman. Notwithstanding what I said earlier, I think R5 needs to be reworded as well, but reworded in the sense that bits of it can be removed. I would actually suggest that we don't actually, in the light of the conversation that has gone on, constrain by the assumption that we've got to reduce costs. It may be that isn't necessary at this stage. And I would suggest that we say the committee supports officers to progress in-house operational improvement proposals for the Mill Hall, with any decisions requiring further approval to be reported back to committee, and take all that lump out about reducing costs, because I think that's a presumption, and I think that should be one of the considerations of the task and finish group. I'm not saying that we haven't got to reduce our costs in the longer term, but I don't see now is the appropriate time. I think we should actually throw everything at it to make sure it is a successful venture.
Just to clarify, what you're talking about is the new recommendation R6, not the original R5.
I beg your pardon, yes, R6, but just taking that chunk out in the middle.
And Councillor Hookway wants to come in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Horton. I think that would be, changing that wording might be inappropriate, because we're not looking at reducing costs per se. We're probably looking at making efficiencies, and efficiencies can come in a number of different forms. At a meeting today, there was an expert in energy efficiency, and he's done an audit on the Mill Hall. So some of the matters that he's brought up might come into play in relation to this. If we exclude that from the recommendations, we might be excluding the opportunity to make energy efficiency decisions relating to the Mill Hall.
Councillor Wooten.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not disagreeing with that point, but the specific recommendation does say very clearly, and long-term measures to reduce operating costs. So it does talk about reducing costs. And then in the detail of the report goes on with a table of saying how those costs might be reduced. All I'm saying is I think it's a bit premature to be talking about that until we've done this piece of work. I think you're setting up a task and finish group, and then you're constraining them by saying, well, you need to reduce costs. I just think we need to be open-minded. I'm not disagreeing with the point that you're making, but the recommendation does clearly create that air of reducing costs.
I would like to bring in Fiona into this for clarification.
I would just say that the new R6 just is worded to support officers to explore. That's the changing words. It's not to progress anything. That's been taken out. We're now saying to explore. So I'll leave members to decide. Explore doesn't commit you to anything.
Are we happy with that approach, Councillor Wooten? Okay. Members, I will now move a motion that the recommendations on page 122 be approved, with obviously the amendments that we've discussed. Yeah.
Not sure I can read your writing, Jackie. R2 is now amended to say that the committee agrees that the council should continue to operate the Mill Hall Arts and Events Centre under the current council-operated model in the short to medium term, which would include the current occupiers of the building. There's a new R5, which says the committee agrees to establish a task and finish group, we've now changed that to, of 6 members, 1 from each political group, on the future operating model for the Mill Hall Arts and Events Centre, with relevant stakeholders being invited to meetings as required, with the terms of reference being to input into the options being developed under R3 and R4, and to report its findings back to committee within 2 months of the first meeting being held. And R6 is that the committee supports officers to explore in-house operational improvement proposals for the Mill Hall, including short, medium and long-term measures to reduce operating costs. Have we taken that out? No. Still there. Improve staffing
Sorry,
efficiency.
can I come in here? Reduce operating costs can mean putting solar panels on, for instance, because that will reduce the cost of heating. So I don't understand why you want to remove reducing costs in that sense. It's a lot of sense of it, isn't there?
but what we are saying is we are going to explore different options to get to the right place. Are we happy with that, Councillor Wooten?
Yeah, I mean, I think Councillor Hoy makes a really good point, but I'm not quite sure how we wrap that up in a, this implied that we were actually looking at specifics to do with staffing, or set out on that table, the table on 125. But I wouldn't want us to exclude good opportunities in terms of energy efficiency.
So what I would suggest is we keep the text as it is, because it's giving the officer opportunity to go away and explore different things, and it may take a different outcome based on what we get to and what has been discussed. Councillor Lisa Newport.
Thank you, Chair. So my understanding of the new recommendation 6 is we are exploring the options, with any decisions requiring further approval to be reported back to committee. I think it's quite simple and straightforward. I agree with the new recommendation 6.
Thank you. Councillor Ward. Thank you. Yeah. Members, I will now move a motion that the recommendations on page 122, along with the amendments that have been suggested. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Hookway. We will now vote on the recommendations along with the amendments suggested. Members, are you happy for me to take these en bloc? Thank you. We will vote on a show of hands. Everyone in favour of the motions? That is pretty unanimous. Thank you very much. Those recommendations are carried. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot to all the members in getting that through. So we are getting to some. Okay, item 14, Freight House. The report begins on page 131, and I would like to invite Fiona to provide an update. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report on Freight House follows on from previous committee decisions to do a number of things. So first of all, it's noting the work that has been continuing, including discussions with Rochford Town Council on a potential community asset transfer. And secondly, it's dealing with an expression of interest process that was carried out and outlines the fact that there was not one clear party that we could recommend at this point. The recommendation is therefore that we continue for a short period of time further discussions both with the Town Council and the two strongest expression of interest respondents to try to find a solution which may potentially look like a consortium approach. I would stress that there were 3 bids. 2 were extremely strong and had different merits but both strengths. And one of the bids didn't meet the basic criteria, so won't be taken forward. I would add that discussions with the Town Council have been progressing, but they have a range of questions that we needed further time to work with them on, hence why we've asked for the 2-month extension. So I'm happy to take any questions at that point.
Before we go to any questions, Councillor Hookway would like to propose an amendment.
Yes, we have a proposal for recommendation 7. The recommendation reads, the committee agrees to establish a cross-party working group of 6 members. Councillor Wootton, I'll rephrase that. The committee agrees to establish a cross-party task and finish group of 6 members, 1 from each political group, on the future operating model for Freight House, with relevant stakeholders being invited to meetings as required, with the terms of reference being to input into the options being developed under Recommendation 2, Recommendation 3 and Recommendation 4, and to report its findings back to committee within 2 months period of the first meeting being held.
And I would also like to point out the original recommendations suggested a 3-month period. We are now proposing that to be reduced to a 2-month period. Any questions on this item, please? Councillor Marriott.
Thank you, Chairman. As I asked earlier, how much money has been invested in the Freight House so far? How far have the works that were to be carried out on it progressed? Because I'm concerned that there doesn't seem to be much work progressing, and the former tenant could have put on more events and kept the building open if the work got delayed. Also, there's been a hell of a lot of work put into this with both Rochford Town Council and the design cabin and other members of the public to try and keep this building alive. So I'm concerned with the clock running down towards LGR. Although I welcome that this 3 months extension has been reduced to 2 months, I think that goes a good way to mitigating that.
Councillor Marriott,
Can we ensure that this is treated with the utmost urgency to keep this building viable and doesn't fall by the wayside due to LGR? Thank you very much for your indulgence, Chairman.
Yeah, I take your point. We cannot discuss the specifics of the proposal with the bidder in the meeting. So if you would like to ask specific questions, I'll have to clear the gallery first.
I'm happy to answer in terms of progress update on the actual work. So I think there's about £46,000 that's been spent to date of the 500,000. The remainder was subject to a tender for the contractor. So I can't actually name the contract sum, but that they will the contract to be signed at the end of this week, and works are still on track to be completed by September.
Thank you.
Councillor Belton.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Again, it's a shame the recommendations are coming forward on the night and not as part of the report, but I recognise you're trying to sort of work with what you're hearing. I don't understand the reason for a task and finish group on this particular one. We've got 2 bidders, both have successful bids, just cannot be taken forward for reasons that I'm not sure if we're allowed to discuss or not. So no, we can't discuss. So we can't take them forward separately, but there is an opportunity to take them forward together, which we discussed at the leaders' meeting some weeks ago. Surely, before we as members get together as a working group, all that needs to happen is those parties, Rochford Town Council, yourself, and probably Fiona or another, have a meeting. Because if there is an opportunity for those 2 to work together, we don't need a working group, because actually it resolves itself, which was always part of the progress. And locality should also obviously be in that room. So I'm a little bit confused as to what the working group would be trying to achieve. There was working groups before, there was working groups predating different administrations. So I just think before we get there, we agreed as leaders only 2.5 weeks ago that a meeting would take place. That meeting hasn't taken place. What is the purpose of now undermining that and having a working group?
Councillor Hookway.
I think Councillor Belton is making a presumption about the outcome.
If I may, we sat in a leaders' meeting 2.5 weeks ago, and we were told that there are 2 bidders that both met the brief. There was one that didn't, but that neither one could be appointed. So Councillor Malvia said he would happily sit down with those 2 bidders and an officer and locality to look at a potential of a consortium, which was actually what was said when Fiona and the chairman announced this report. So I just think that before we set up a task and finish group, that meeting could take place next week if people are available. If there's consensus, even if there is a work, it would be to discuss the mechanism. I just wonder, what are we meeting to discuss when we've already got 2 successful community bidders that have gone through months of hard work, pain, suffering, uncertainty. So this is not to be difficult. This is actually what we agreed 2.5 weeks ago was going to happen. And I just think we can actually speed this whole process up and take a big chunk of uncertainty out of it.
Yeah, I'll come into this. At that stage, we did not know that the works would not be completed in time by the end of September. That okay, so
Yeah, the works are on track. I think the challenge has been so we are, Councillor Belton, trying to get those meetings in. I think it's just the challenge of diaries trying to get it in, which is why it hasn't happened yet. I think the proposal around a task and finish working group, is it's following on from Councillor Hookway, really. It's if we can't find a resolution, rather than bring back another report to committee saying we can't find a resolution, it might be helpful to have a group of members to discuss that informally before it goes anywhere. So that was the principle behind it.
Councillor James Newport.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So on this particular item, I think there's a dependency here, and there's a risk with that dependency that we all are aware of. And I think the purpose of a task and finish group would be that we need a plan B, because if that all falls apart, it's like a chain when you're buying a house. If one person pulls out, what happens to the whole thing? And we've heard tonight that we're time limited. We need to get moving and make decisions. So we need to have a plan. We can't just rely on one plan. There has to be an alternative plan. If we don't have the alternative plan, again, what will happen? We'll run out of time. We won't be able to get things through, budgets. We've already got a problem with getting delivery and staffing issues to actually carry out this. I mean, poor old Andy must be pulling his hair out with all these assets he's got to deal with. But, you know, seriously, we need to sit down and look at the best way forward. And we need to be able to look at the detail of why one bidder... Councillor Belton said we had 2 successful bidders. We didn't, because they weren't successful in their own right. And that's the problem, is those parties might not want to work together or can't work together for whatever reasons. They too may have constitutions that they have to work with. Then you're introducing the town council, and as I said earlier, they've got a huge process to go through. They've got all their members of the council to try and back it if they want to. They might not want to. They too, and I'm pretty sure they'll have the same financial regulations as every other town and parish council, will have to go out to public consultation if they're going to take that asset on. So we should be promoting good governance as a council, and I'm sure everyone in this room supports that, making the right decisions in the right way. But we do need to have a plan B, because otherwise the time's going to run out and a decision will actually get made for us rather than us making the decisions.
Thank you, Councillor Newport. And I would agree with that. What was discussed 2.5 weeks ago was a consortium of those 2 interested parties and to explore if they could work together. And I have had those conversations individually, but then we need to progress those. And once we have the task and finish group, we can have a regular conversation to progress this as quickly as we can. Councillor Linden.
Thank you, Chair. So 2.5 weeks ago, and we're 2.5 weeks further on, we did agree at that time that all parties would be spoken to and that we would bring to a conclusion an offer, a fait accompli. Obviously that hasn't happened because for whatever reason, I'd like to know why it hasn't happened, why the meeting hasn't happened. But I also notice in R3 that we're actually going back in time, where we're basically saying we're going to explore things we've already explored, find out a single operator, find out a consortium. We've already discussed all of this. That's why we reached 2 people. That's why we got the interest from the 2 people. And I thought we were at the stage now where we're just going to explore whether we could actually make those 2 work. And from my understanding is that we can work together. So I'm a bit confused why we're going backwards. I hear what other councillors are saying. We need a plan B. We've had loads of Plan Bs over the last year, 2, 3 years. We're at a stage now where we've got literally the pinnacle point where we can actually take this forward. So let's put our efforts in trying to get that concluded. Yeah, and if that falls out, we do need. But we've already looked back through the paperwork. We've already made those decisions. We've already looked at alternatives. But let's just try and get these over the line, please.
Point noted, but I would echo Councillor Newport's views on this, because we need to get this right in the interest of time and reaching the right decision. So whilst I acknowledge your views, we need to have a balanced view, and that is what we can achieve through the task and finish.
But as I said, we've been out, we had consultants in, we've got reports back to actually say Plan Bs, we've got loads of Plan Bs out there. We've actually got a Plan A. We need to try and bring that to conclusion or throw it out as soon as possible.
But there are a number of interested parties in this. Not only do we have the 2 bidders, we also need to take into consideration the involvement of town council. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, more or less the same as the Mill Hall. This is really a decision. Is this a commercial decision or is it going to be a social decision? And to me, again, this looks like a hybrid between the two. It's going to need investment to make it a social with a commercial link within it. So the actual construction cannot be on a commercial basis. It has to be based within probably a social and commercial hybrid, because I don't think a commercial idea will actually stand alone.
Point noted. My response is the same as the earlier one. Thank you. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's fair to say that this particular project has just been fraught with delay. We did put it out when the operator that we had in the building earlier in the year was given notice to quit, that the place would be back open in September. Councillor Newport has eloquently explained how that is never going to happen, not if we're looking for the town council to take lead on this. It's going to be months. The EOI was due to be started at the beginning of the year. That didn't start until March. The building work was due to start straight away. That isn't starting until the beginning of next month. How much guarantee have we got that everything is actually going to be ready to rock and roll in September? Quite frankly, we need to face up to the reality. It's not. And so the thing is that what I'm finding particularly frustrating is that the leaseholder that we had in there at the beginning of the year, between the time that he actually came out and the time before workers started in there, he's lost £60,000 worth of bookings. That is a hard fact by what we have actually done in the way we have processed this as a council. That is simply not good enough. So what I would like officers to look at would be in September to be looking at putting that leaseholder back in there on a temporary basis until we know when there is going to be a decision made, because there is a lot hinging on this. If we delay, let's say, till November, and you try and get events started in November, you will have lost all of the Christmas events. There won't be time to get them sorted. Then you're hitting January, February, which, as everyone knows, in the events trade, that is the quietest time of year. So you're not going to make any money there. I think the operator proved their worth when they were actually in there, and we need to be realistic here about the timescale. We need to actually understand with the town council how long it's going to take for the process to go through there. If we've got to go through a consultation, that's not going to be weeks. That's going to be months. If we're going to have negotiations with the various parties involved, that's not going to be weeks. That's going to be months. History tells us, with the way that this has been handled, that this will take months. And so in the meantime, the residents are expecting that place to be open. Can we at least be honest with ourselves and say, okay, That's what it is. Let's put a leaseholder in there so at least the place gets used. Thank you.
So I know the point you're saying. I don't think we can agree right now that we will put the existing tenant back into the building. I can't commit to that. We would need to explore any legal position with respect to that, but we can take away an action to explore putting someone into the building in the event that it's empty after the works are completed. Because I note the point you're saying around keeping the building occupied. So I think in terms of the actual work, so whilst there may have been delays in getting it started, the end date remains the same. So I don't think there have been any delays in respect of getting the works completed.
Councillor Reeves.
To come back on that, if that's the case, then if we had actually got all the contracts in place by the time that the leaseholder, the original leaseholder, was in place, was there, then surely we should have actually been in a position to actually say to him or to that company that you could, if you wanted to, extend it. Because what's ended up happening is we've lost as an events space some precious time of the year when it is the most demanded time for those events. The other thing that I wanted to bring out here is we've just been talking about the Mill Hall and the amount it's costing and the amount of backing that has been put into that. Both of the companies that are involved, I'm aware, are CICs. So they're both a charitable base. It seems rather perverse to me that we are looking to make huge support packages available to the Mill Hall and nothing available to the Freight House. I'm a little bit puzzled by that. Can you have some clarity on that one?
So I can't comment specifically on any of the bidders. That would have to go into a confidential discussion at some point in the future. But no one's ever said that there couldn't be some financial incentive packages. That's where we need to look when we've had conversations with the bidders. If members are inclined to go with any option that we put on the table, which may be around a consortium or maybe around one of those bidders, depending on how discussions go, members are quite entitled to consider whether they might give a further support package. That wasn't where we started a couple of years ago on this project. It was very much about mitigating cost for the council and making sure the community could use the building. But we can have that discussion, of course we can, and the council can consider looking at grant programmes. We are already looking at grant programmes for further refurbishment of the building in terms of heritage lottery. So, at the appropriate time, that could be considered.
Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. You may not realise this, but I could probably talk for an hour at least on the Freight House, having been involved with it for 2 years solid. I'm pleased about the report. I'm pleased about the changes you've brought forward. I can support a task and finish group. I think it needs it. I'm a bit disappointed the report focuses on governance and operating models. I know that's important, but I just would like to have it recorded here that I'm disappointed that the preferred option doesn't explain how it can help the wider regeneration of Rochford Town Centre, which was the original intention of what we were doing with the Mill Hall, Freight House. The Mill Hall is also supposed to do that, but we're not on the Mill Hall at the moment. So I'm quite disappointed it doesn't reflect that within this report as well, because I see the Freight House as a strategic asset for our district. As I said, I will support those options. I just want to come back to Councillor Ward's point about social value. I think everything this council does has a social value. Sometimes there will be some commercial value within it, but I think when you look at playgrounds, there's very little that isn't a business value there, but it's a social value. So this council is used to doing social value, and I think sometimes we forget about how we record that in these reports, and I think that's something we need to get used to for the Freight House and the Mill Hall. We need to be able to calculate, and future reports should recognise the social value that this brings to the district and to our towns. I just want to come back quickly on Councillor Eves, KICs aren't charities, they're community interest companies, so they're not actually charities and they don't have a charitable status. So they are very different and they can distribute profits to their shareholders. Not all of them, but some of their profits. So they are very different to charities. And Councillor Linden, I do understand your frustrations because it does feel like that at times that you talk about things and it takes a while. But I think it's very important that something isn't decided in a meeting of leaders. It's decided by this committee. So I think even if it had been decided in that meeting, it should still come back to this committee, which is probably why it's in the report. But that's all I have to say. I will support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lisa Newport.
Thank you, Chair. But Councillor Hoy's just covered the points I wanted to raise. Thank you very much.
That's good. It saves a bit of time. Councillor Belton.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I think it's been a helpful debate for sure. And so under R3.2 about undertaking further due diligence and engagement with the two strongest EOI respondents, if we could, I don't need to amend anything, but just for clarity, that's going to include a sit down, if they agree. If they don't agree, you can't force that, but a sit down so that, because that will help inform the task and finish group. And I completely hear what Councillor Newport has said, task and finish for a backup option rather than necessarily, again, to try and reinvent the wheel, because if the solution is there, as Councillor Linden said, maybe this is all for nothing. But just want that reassurance that that step will be taken. Now, you mentioned about the 2-month extension. Our next meeting's in September. So what does that process look like? What happens in 2 months' time? Is it a report to committee? September is the time that the work should be completed, or we could potentially put a tenant in there on a short-term operating basis. So I think, and I appreciate this come up in the debate, so you might need a few minutes, but I think we need to understand what the stages are so that we don't miss a trick, because otherwise if we get back here in September and then agree that we'd like to put a temporary operator in there whilst next steps are achieved, we miss the Christmas rush, as Councillor Eves said. So we may just want to think about that, if you don't mind, just to wrap it up.
So this is exactly where we want to set up the task and finish group. So we'll go away, we'll look at those options. Do you want to come in and fill me on?
So I'm acting a little bit on the hoof on this one, but I think the way it would work is that we would meet with the interested parties. We would report that back to a task and finish group. It may be that we just have one meeting of a task and finish group, and then that would report into a September committee with the recommendations to go forward. I'd like to think that will be quite clear cut, but as I've learned with Freight House, nothing is clear cut. So, but the intention would be to have at least one task and finish group meeting prior to a September committee.
Councillor Wootton.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just a little concerned that from memory, I think the next scheduled meeting of this committee is the 29th of September.
There is one on the 7th of September.
There's one on the 7th. Right. Okay. Well, in the myriad of calendar bookings, sometimes these things can be missed. So it's the 7th of September you're talking about bringing this back. Okay, that's certainly a reasonable.
Sorry, what I should have said is, given that that would be over the holiday period, I do think I would ask members to be pragmatic in terms of who attends and is able to attend that task and finish meeting, because otherwise we won't make September. So if you can't make it, please nominate someone else when we come round and ask who's going to sit on that group, because that's really important.
I think we've covered all the questions on this. Members, I will now move. Sorry, Councillor Webb.
Sorry, Chairman. Just going back to Councillor Eves' point earlier, do we need to put some sort of amendment down that if we don't come to a conclusion by September, that we will speak to the previous provider and see if they'd be willing to take over running the Freight House in that busy season? Did an excellent job last year. I thoroughly enjoyed the beer festival, the first in a number of years, actually. I hate to miss that opportunity. Just wondering if it's possible to put some sort of amendment down, just as a backstop position, I guess. Thank you.
I don't think we are in a position to make that commitment just yet. Although we take the point on board, we need to explore those options, and that's why we are saying task can finish is where we can provide an update.
My concern, Chairman, is that the next meeting of this committee is not till the end of September. So 7th of September. So would that give us time at that point to make a decision if we needed to invite somebody to come back in for the autumn-winter period? Thank you.
Yes, that's absolutely correct, and that's what we are working towards. Thank you. Members, I will now move a motion that the recommendations on page 132 be approved. Can I have a seconder, please? Subject to amendments that we've discussed. Thank you, Councillor Oakwe. We will now vote on the recommendations. Members, are you happy for me to take these en bloc? Thank you very much. We'll now do a vote on show of hands. Everyone in support of the motion? That's unanimous to me. Those recommendations are carried. Last item of the day, committee work program. Do members, the report begins on page 143. Do the members have any questions? Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Just as per my earlier comment, can we just add the options paper for 57 South Street, please?
Yeah, we'll do that. Thank you. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you. Could we add the culture, and I can never get the name right, culture visitor economy strategy to the work list, please, and the economic development framework to the work list, please.
That's fair. Thank you. Any other observations? Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. Just can I ask for the digital strategy annual update? Could the points on the audit committee please be included in that as well? Thank you.
Fiona?
Yes.
That's great. Thank you. Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Just a suggestion for you may want to consider. This is going to be another huge meeting because it's big topic items and it's decision-making time. You might want to put the public interest ones at the beginning of the agenda so that members of the public aren't stuck here at 10 o'clock or later, potentially. Something for you to consider nearer the time as chair, but it's going to be a long meeting.
Yeah, point noted. Thank you. Members, this report is to note only. Is that noted? Thank you very much. That now concludes our business for this evening. Thank you very much for your attendance and cooperation. Thank you very much. Meeting ended at 22:08. Thank you. Good night.